Bombshell's revelations coming in a new book on former President Joe Biden's declining health, including the fact that he did not apparently recognize actor George Clooney at a June 2024 fundraiser here in L.A., one of the biggest fundraisers of all time. The book, written by CNN's Jake Tapper and Axios' Alex Thompson, it's called Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, its cover-up, and his disastrous choice to run again. It's to be released on May 20th. I was at that fundraiser at the Peacock Theater in downtown L.A. as the print broadcast reporter. Seema Mehta was the print pool reporter. I was the pool broadcast reporter. Seema joins me now. And Seema, I want to read an excerpt from that book for you. And here it is. This was an aide trying to remind President Biden who this is. George Clooney. Oh, yeah? Hi, George. Clooney was shaken to his core. The president hasn't recognized him, a man he had known for years. This was the president of the United States. Clooney was certainly not the only one concerned. What do you make of that fact, and sort of talk about what it was like being there that night?
Well, I remember when we were at the fundraiser, I mean, the then president was clearly tired. He had just come back from like a very long foreign trip, and yeah, and he's an older gentleman. That said, he was next to, former President Obama. And there are very few people who can sit next to former President Obama, given, Obama's, speaking skills. I mean, people at the best of their game necessarily can't match up to him. So, I mean, I think there were some questions, but I don't think anybody publicly knew at the time the deep concerns that people had about then President Biden's mental state, about his security.
I remember walking out of the hallway that night and being around a bunch of Democratic donors who all looked stunned at how bad President Biden looked and acted, and they wanted to be enthused about him, but they weren't. And some of them, privately, publicly said nice things about it. But there was a sense that something was off. And a lot of people said, well, he had just traveled from across the world, and maybe he was just tired, maybe he was having a bad night. But there were signs of what we saw on that debate stage that night. And a lot of people, though, didn't really say anything. What do you make of the fact that this is all coming out now? Does it matter because Biden isn't president anymore? I
mean, I think, yeah, there was, at that time, there were clearly whispers, like we didn't fully know. We did not know the details in this book. I certainly didn't. There were concerns, and then those concerns came to full fruition at the debate, which was like, what, 3 weeks after the fact. I don't know that it necessarily matters, nor do I know. I mean, I think, Democrats have, something to talk, to ask amongst themselves about, the way that they handled this, certainly. But do I think it would have necessarily made a difference in the end result of the election? I don't know that, because there was so little time left already. And there was, there was a disconnect between what the Democratic Party was saying on the campaign trail about, oh, unemployment's getting better, inflation's getting better. They would point to stats. But when I talked to voters in critical states like Arizona and Nevada, they didn't feel that when they were going to the grocery store. They didn't feel that when they were filling up their gas tanks. So there was a divide. There was no Bill Clinton, I feel your pain kind of moment. And so ultimately, I don't know if it would have made a difference in the election.
Well, I don't think it would have hurt to have somebody a little younger and maybe somebody who wasn't a part of the administration who could have argued against some of those administration policies or had a little bit more cover. It's challenging for the Vice President of the United States to do that. But, you can't, you'll never know in terms of a hypothetical. But obviously, right. Part of the reason why people are interested in this now is the question is, was the Democratic Party lying? And if so, can you trust them going forward? And what does accountability look like for them? What does accountability look like for the media? A lot of us who saw the president and were, quietly concerned about it, should that have been said more loudly? And what does that mean going forward in terms of building trust? Because at this moment in history, there's so little trust in the media, so little trust in politicians, and so little trust just of people talking. And that's an important part of all this.
Well, I mean, there's such a lack of trust in institutions, whether it's the media, the government, and whatever you want to talk about. There's such a lack of trust in institutions, which I think, as a society, we need to deal with more broadly. To your earlier point, once Vice President Harris became the nominee, she really did she struggled to sort of separate herself from, the man who chose her to be his running mate. and to somehow provide some, daylight between them. And I think that is a really good point too, because I mean, like it took, that's like the question, that number one question that she should have been most prepared for once she became nominee. And she struggled so many times to answer that
And
question.
according to the book Fight by Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnes, Joe Biden literally said to her, "No daylight, kid," meaning stick with me. Remember, I'm the one who brought you here. Seema Mehta, the LA Times. We could talk about this all day, but because we've got so much breaking news, we can't. But thank you so much. We'll have to pick this conversation up again soon.